Sustainability. This is our October regular meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. It is 6:01. Will the secretary please call roll?
Yes. Matt Austin.
Present.
Caitlin. Matt Flaherty.
Here.
David.
Here.
Nigella. Nolan.
Here.
Emma.
Here.
John.
Here.
Jessica. Hannah, I'm here. Justin. Alex. Heidi. And Dennis.
Here.
All right. Who knows? Some people might be on
Yeah.
the Zoom link.
I told him to email. Okay, today's agenda was distributed by email yesterday, Monday 9th. Are there any objections to adopting the agenda as distributed and shown on the current screen?
I just wanted to ask if Waste Management could go before the other working groups, because I know the presenter has a pickup of children. The presenter is coming.
Okay,
That was my only request.
sure.
Okay.
Approved. The minutes for the September 12th regular meeting were included in the packet. Are there any corrections? Okay, seeing none, their minutes are approved. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment? Okay. Seeing none. Report from acting chair, that's me. So I sent out an email about requesting feedback. The Common Council's Special Committee on Council Processes has been reviewing an organizational assessment of boards and commissions prepared by the Novak Consulting Group from January 2022. The Novak report mentions that the city should regularly review the scopes of individual boards and commissions, suggests identifying areas of overlap and addressing those. So we sent out the description of our the Commission of Sustainability's purpose, duties, and goals. I'll read it. It says, public policy and purpose, a sustainable community seeks to enhance the socio-environmental, economic well-being of the community while taking precautions not to compromise the quality of life of future generations. Toward that end, it reduces its use of non-renewable natural resources and its production of waste while at the same time improving livability. The mission of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability is to promote sustainable socio-economic environmental well-being of Bloomington and all its inhabitants. Do we think that accurately reflects and captures the activities of the commission?
I did see that. I do have feedback.
Okay.
I will provide it to you as soon as possible, but I would like to include the SDGs.
True.
Yeah, and maybe expand a little bit on what the sustainable models would look like.
Okay. All right. And you'll just send
I'll
me
send
your
it to you,
thoughts?
yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, just back out with a little more context too. I chair the committee that's reviewing this work for the council and looking at the organizational assessment, which we've talked about a little bit before in the context of BCOS and EC proposed joining. But this is a bit different, which is just reviewing the scope. Most commissions are laid out in city code, at least all the advisory commissions. And this is interesting. I hadn't realized that what Stephen Lucas, our council attorney, sent out really just highlighted that section 1 of Bloomington Municipal Code 2.12.100. I think my intent was actually for each commission to really take a look at the whole section of city code that pertains to its commission if it thought there were things that needed changed. So I would suggest we should really look at the whole thing, including number of appointments, who they are, qualifications, that sort of thing. By way of example, so that's just the first paragraph that Emma read, but there's more. So about appointments to residency, like it's designated that Monroe County appoints one member, that's Nolan, serving on behalf of the Monroe County Environmental Commission. There's an ex officio member from Indiana University, either the director of sustainability or their designee. Jessica Davis has been attending some, but I don't think she's intending to continue attending based on my most recent conversation with her, and whether we can get somebody to attend regularly is an open question. I think it's a laudable goal, but we've really struggled for the 5 years that I've been involved in this commission to have consistent attendance from that ex officio position or role. There's a whole powers and duties section. So yeah, I think the whole thing's worthy of review and consideration for updates or changes. And I was hoping the SDGs would be brought up as part of what the commission had already adopted for itself as a framework. I think that's great to include in suggested edits. And then the other thing that was on my mind is the climate action plan. I think this body has been designated as the resident-led commission tasked with helping to communicate and lead and guide plan implementation. And so that's a new city plan that didn't exist when the Commission on Sustainability was created, but it's become part of the purview. So like that should be reflected in code as well, in my opinion. So what we could consider is just more discussion around that tonight if folks if we want to like maybe talk through the particular components of what's in city code and get thoughts, and then we could field suggested text or edits for our consideration next meeting with some like offline work in the interim and suggestion of actual edits if that seems okay to folks. So
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Second.
So yeah, sorry to I didn't mean to like take over the agenda item.
One comment on that.
Mhm.
So Jessica Davis is now the Chief Sustainability Officer for IU.
Right.
And they're theoretically looking to hire someone for the Bloomington campus.
Right.
So I would hold off making any changes to that until that process, like whether or not they hire anybody. I work there, I don't know that I would trust them. With my children, I don't know if no, that's I need better. Anyway, so I would just hold off on that one for now until we learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's
It's
enough
a nice
structural
idea.
changes underway.
There certainly could be a lot more
Yeah.
interaction between the university
Yeah.
and the city. This is one avenue. Let's see what happens.
Is there any way we could have influence on that? Because we do
Very
have a
unlikely.
lot of, we have a lot of
No one on campus. can have
students are really
influence?
interested.
So,
What's that?
Oh, you mean the hiring of the whole process, or
No, just
once
making
you-
sure that there still is one.
I mean,
I
so
think-
I teach there. Lots of students want experience. There are some programs to get them into the city. I know a lot of students kind of find their own way. There could be a lot more, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, for a Bloomington campus
Yeah.
representative to interact with, or you said that Jessica Davies.
So I don't know what the timeline is. Ideally the next few months,
Okay.
according to Jessica, but realistically, who knows? To hire a Bloomington. So in the past, they've had typically one person doing all of IU, and then they had one person doing Bloomington and nobody for the rest of IU. And now they've got Jessica doing all of IU, and they're looking to hire also somebody to do just the focus on the Bloomington campus.
I see. Okay.
I don't know what that's going to look like.
No, just
But
as long as it happens, we're good to go.
what's that?
As long as that happens, we're good to go.
If that happens, it's a good start.
Yeah.
So we'll
Exactly.
see.
I have a question. So for the Justice 40 initiative under the Biden administration, how is Bloomington utilizing that funding for disadvantaged communities here? I was looking at the census tract. They have this tool that shows like there's certain tracts that are considered disadvantaged, and like is Bloomington utilizing any of the funding? I don't know if Sean talked about that before, but I was just wondering if you knew about it.
Sean's probably better to direct the question to, but just working with some of the J40 stuff, like in the context of other programmatic things in my professional day to day, like it's an executive order that's a kind of like whole of government directive for each agency to develop its own programs and rules consistent with the vision of 40% of the benefits going to disadvantaged communities. So yeah, there's these tools out there, but like it's a highly program specific type of analysis. So like just as an example, like the Inflation Reduction Act had a whole bunch of rebates for like home decarbonization measures like heat pump water heaters.
Yeah.
States are tasked with coming up with programs that DOE has to approve to get those funds out. Those should theoretically be consistent with trying to achieve the 40% benefits, which the government has clarified doesn't mean 40% of the money going to X community, but 40% of the benefits. The short answer is it's very complicated. It's not like, oh, every municipality or government gets like a chunk of money and 40% has to go to these communities. It's just like really context specific. That said, like there may well be, we have a grants coordinator, for instance, at the city that has worked with Sean some on being able to make sure we can access Inflation Reduction Act, Infrastructure Investment Act, and Jobs Act, and other federal opportunities. And a lot of these I've seen have like a community benefits plan or like J40 component, like where like that's part of your scoring or your application is to identify like how you're going to benefit disadvantaged communities. I know specifically we just signed on to support an applicant with support from the mayor, an application that Rewiring America has in with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is like $27 billion being administered by EPA for home upgrades and including a bunch of affordable housing in that. And so like they would benefit, Bloomington would be one of the beneficiary communities, and the goal would be to direct funds to support specifically J40 communities. So we at least have some, connections and effort to take advantage of those dollars where they're available. But that's the only specific example I know of. Again, I think Sean would be much better suited to like answer any, or the grants coordinator would be better suited to answer what specific opportunities we've applied for and or secured that would have like a J40 component.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any way, like, when we're thinking about our plan, that we can integrate that into the specific communities, especially with homelessness happening here in the city, and the impacts of climate change on homelessness. It's just thinking about that.
No, thank you. It's a highly important dimension to be focused on. I think Najla and the folks in the Just Transition Group in particular have like really emphasized like the social sustainability aspect and like intersections with climate impacts. And yeah, things like extreme heat and extreme precipitation events and others leave unhoused folks especially at like extreme risk, not to mention others in very low income housing. So yeah, I love when BCOS like takes on projects and efforts that kind of are at that intersection of social justice and climate action. So yeah, I just voicing my agreement and the importance of focusing on that as a commission at some level. Yeah, sorry, I don't have more.
No, that's fine. I just wanted information on it. Yeah.
Does anyone have anything else to add right now? Maybe we can continue this conversation. But what you mentioned, city code.
So yeah, Bloomington Municipal Code. If you just Google Bloomington Municipal Code, there's library.municode.com resource. I can send a reply email to what you sent out, Emma, right now to the commission with just a hyperlink. If you go to section 2.12.100, maybe we can even pull that up, I don't know. It's the section of Title II in Bloomington Code is where most of the commissions are housed. So that's the chunk of city code that created the Commission on Sustainability, I think in 2008, or maybe 2005 initially via ordinance, that I believe Councilmember Ralla brought forward at that time. So it charts out the public policy and purpose, which you included in your email and read that paragraph, but it's also got a general section, appointments and residency, qualifications, officers, meetings, staffing, and a powers and duties section. It's not super long, it's 8 paragraphs. One of those paragraphs has 7 subparts that are like a sentence each. And so, yeah, I feel like that whole section of code that is what defines BCOS is worth taking a look at because, 2.12.100. There you go. So yeah, this is it. That's the whole thing. Scroll up, it's all on one page. So yeah, I don't know if we want to spend some time in this meeting at all, in the new business section or something to talk through some of these beyond just the policy and purpose. It sounds like we've already identified at least a couple of things that might be worth changing. So yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Got it. Okay.
So we're looking at the proposition of joining the Environmental Commission in addition to reviewing the code itself.
So this is actually distinct, and I'll include some on that in my update as well. Do folks want to put this in the new business section for some discussion tonight?
Can we review it first and then
Sure.
next time, I think?
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have sent this around in advance too and clarified
Has there ever been a merging of two commissions?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so there wouldn't be any kind of
Precedent.
precedent on how to make that happen.
Nope.
What are the activities of the Environmental Commission?
So the Environmental Commission is, I'm going to request that we hold off until my updates to get into this discussion a little bit more, but.
Yeah.
So we should also review this for the environmental commission so that we can compare and contrast.
Yeah, that's
Perhaps
kind of
so.
my question.
Yeah.
The overlap.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind everybody that there are not a lot of commissions on sustainability in the state of Indiana. There have been multiple cities, Valparaiso, for example, that the citizens tried to create one, and then the city council said no. And so it is a privilege to have a commission on sustainability.
We have been, I mean, he and I personally have been pretty effective at representing and communicating some of those concerns to the city through the Residents Academy. I think our questions are pretty poignant.
Yeah.
And all of in every presentation, so it's good to have
Yeah.
the commission in existence. So.
Are you both participating in Residence Academy now?
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, well, we can move on. I don't think Sean did not provide an update, so we'll move on to Matt's update.
Sure. Thanks. A couple of notes before we get into some of the commission stuff. First, I mentioned a climate town hall event that sibling cities, Bloomington and Palo Alto, are putting on. That was initially scheduled for mid-October. They decided to push it based on difficulty lining up some people to present and things like that. So it's actually now going to be December 3rd. The sibling cities, I'm sure there will be press releases and emails circulated, closer to the date, and we'll have another meeting before then. But they're doing these series of town halls to kind of have idea exchange and interaction between folks in these different cities. And so they have one on race and belonging that's on November 12th. And then again, the one on climate action will be December 3rd. So I'm helping those folks to kind of identify participants. I think the idea is going to be to have a few very short presentations on initiatives that are underway in our cities that might, that the other city might be able to benefit or learn from. So it'll be kind of interactive via Zoom, but also some small group breakouts. It's going to be in the afternoon at the Monroe County Public Library. More details to come, but I just wanted to update folks. Or if you have ideas about things to highlight or that should be included, feel free to let me know. I'm trying to help them coordinate some outreach to high schools to get students involved. I know there's a Palo Alto High School contingent that's been pressing on climate action, and we've had that type of thing in Bloomington. Ebbed and flowed a little bit over time, but we've had that here as well in the past. I think folks from ERI and others are helping to engage on it too, and to make sure there's representation. I think students for New Green World at the university are also being included. So that's the only update there. Just that's forthcoming. Feel free to reach out if you have more questions or want to be involved in some way. Also, I have to step out a little bit early tonight. We have a Climate Action and Resilience Committee meeting, the council at 7 p.m. Upstairs. Anybody's welcome to hop up there after this too and join. Dave Rallo is the chair. The committee includes him, myself, Councilmember Piedmont Smith, and Councilmember Smith. We are trying to make some progress, which has been a little bit fits and starts throughout this year on legislating the phase out of gas-powered off-road equipment, which is pretty complicated. It's easy to do in terms of just passing legislation, and there's plenty of communities that have done that, but implementation and enforcement is a lot more difficult. So we're trying to get to a point where we can actually have a real impact, and we're kind of discussing the dimensions of that. The basic, structure and takeaways that I could share are that first we need to get, at bare minimum, a commitment from the city to what the city can manage to do on its own operational end. And that's no small feat. We have contractors that do a lot of the parks, grounds maintenance, and plenty of other things that make transitioning all of our off-road equipment, mowers, blowers, string trimmers, et cetera, somewhat complicated. But my hope is that we can get IU, maybe MCCSC, county government, and city government to jointly commit to a phase-out timeline for different types of equipment. And if we can achieve that, then we have much more standing and I think legitimacy to pass a community mandate that's either the same timeline or slightly phased. It gets into, again, lots of change. When you start talking about early retirement, replacement of equipment, you start to run into questions of who's going to pay for that and how this will impact local businesses, how it will impact households, all the rest. So it's not an easy problem to solve, but we've been working on it and are hoping to ultimately have some legislation in the near term that we can work on. So I've been meeting with Jessica Davis and others about trying to move this forward, and Sean's been helping on that too. So that's an update from that committee and where I have to step off to at 7. And then finally, I wanted to share some updates from the Special Committee on Council Processes, which is also meeting and working on some recommendations for the council by the end of the year, including possibly some legislative updates, which would include things like changes to city code for the roles and duties of various commissions. So we requested not all of the commissions in the city, because some are defined by state statute, others are sort of mayoral purview only, but commissions that fall under the council purview primarily, council joint mayoral purview, and are primarily advisory commissions, we're asking that they all sort of take a look at their scope and if this reflects their current practice and focus, and if they have any recommended changes. So that's where that's coming from, and appreciate this commission's attention to that. We, as a committee that's been reviewing these 10 recommendations in the consulting group's organizational assessment of the city's boards and commissions, I would say we've kind of, over the last couple meetings, we've really kind of coalesced around the idea that the most important and recommendations in the heart of that organizational assessment are really a lot more process and operations oriented. It's the last 7 recommendations 4 through 10, if you read the report, that need the most attention. The first 3 recommendations are about combining various boards and commissions. BCOS and EC is one, Parking Commission, Bike Ped Safety, and Traffic Commission combining into a possible single Transportation Commission is another. And then there were some specific recommendations about some parks commissions that they should either just go away entirely or be absorbed into the duties of the Board of Parks Commissioners. And so our sort of feeling is that those 3 are actually not what our focus should be, and that we're maybe hitting pause on trying to consider those before the end of the year. So I know I've said several meetings in a row that we were at some point going to be inviting BCOS and EC to join a conversation about what are the pros and cons of combining or staying separate, how that might look. I think we're probably holding off on that for now, and it's probably something we'll take a look at or invite the administration to lead taking a look at sometime in the next term, the next year. I think it will need commission involvement in brainstorming options and looking at, again, what the pros and cons are, what this transition would look like, all that. And so I think the administration might be in a better position to lead that. And I think we are happy as a council and as a committee to consider those recommendations and actually give them due diligence. But we've kind of pivoted away from that as a focus for this year, again, in favor of the operational recommendations, which I would say center around essentially standardization, optimization, and ownership of the board and commission system universe at the city. We have something like 43 boards and commissions, give or take. It depends on how you count some. And that's a lot. And there is not at all uniform practice with respect to onboarding of new commissioners, training of officers of commissions, training of staff liaisons for commissions, the commission application process, and feedback timelines, all of that. So it's sort of split across different departments of the city right now. And one of the key recommendations, in fact, the final recommendation of that organizational assessment, was to designate a single employee whose job it is to be the manager of this. Yes, they'll still call on city legal, they'll still call on council office, et cetera, but it's really got to be housed and owned by somebody if we want to be truly consistent about some of these things. Another example, implementing a uniform short annual report. We don't have annual reports from all commissions. It's very scattershot. There's no real follow-up as to whether or not we're getting them. And as such, it's hard to keep an eye on what all the commissions are doing. It's just simply too much to manage on the council end. So we're looking to implement more of those, again, recommendations 4 through 10 from the report that really have to do with standardizing how we operate boards and commissions in the city. So I think that is long overdue and a good set of recommendations. So we're bringing those recommendations and probably some legislative changes related to the scope of various boards and commissions by the end of the year. And we'll be seeking probably funding sometime early in the new year to chart a job description for a new position, which would most likely be housed in the clerk's office as a sort of independent. Well, first of all, clerk's office is responsible for a lot of administration of boards and commissions now. They have a lot of clerical duties as it is, and the independence of like a third independently elected unit within city government is also probably ideal, since there can be tensions between the mayor and council offices, and commissions are serving both. So to make sure that it's sort of a independent process, that's the recommendation. So happy to talk about that a little bit further. I think it is worth looking at, to answer John's question, it is worth looking at the EC code and purview as we think about BCOS's role and sort of lane within the city. I will say that Environmental Commission is much older. Actually, it was, I think, developed in the 70s and much more around like air and water quality. It was sort of a product of that era of, the environmental movement and creation of EPA and all of our sort of bedrock environmental law, protection laws. So yeah, it's been a minute since I've reviewed the EC's purview myself, but I think it is relevant to look at, and since there is some overlap with Commission on Sustainability, but that's true of a lot of other commissions too. I know a lot of folks tend to default thinking environmental, but there's overlap with Economic Development Commission, for instance, or any number of sort of social status-oriented commissions. So I think that's a good idea to be informed by that as we review our purview. I hope that clarifies kind of where we are as a council and a committee on moving on those recommendations. I'm happy to answer questions or just entertain discussion around any of them, really.
When the consulting firm did their study, none of the commissions were meeting in person. It was all virtual. And not having looked at the study enough to know, were they attending these meetings, or were they just looking purely at the code and what we just looked at? Because if they're not attending the meetings, then it's very easy to not see how different they really are. Mm-hmm.
They might have attended some meetings. I think the bulk of their work was interviews. And so they interviewed, I know, all council members and the clerk's staff, and they interviewed a fair number of staff liaisons, if not all of them, and a fair number of commissioners as well, probably commission chairs. The report very clearly just thinks that the Commission on Sustainability and EC have essentially the same purview, which is, I would say, is incorrect.
Yeah.
I think it's useful to think through and say, it's like environment is a big part of sustainability. To what extent is it redundant? And I think it will help us just understand what they do and where they sit, because there's potentially lots of things that would fit under there that maybe like aren't really a little too focused for us, conservation efforts or whatnot.
That's exactly right.
And the fact they have a historical precedent and been around much longer, and potentially just a whole different range of activities. It's I think a totally valid question, especially for an outsider.
Yeah,
and it's one that I think we should be able to address. So.
Yeah, for sure. The environmental planner, Housing and Planning Department is their staff liaison. They tend to weigh in on development proposals and like environmental standards for development a lot more. So they have historically absolutely sort of operated on, they do air quality monitoring. There's like some specific things they do that really are much more about environmental quality specifically, and not even all that directly necessarily to climate related efforts or even sustainability more broadly.
Well, it's not like there's not enough for two commit.
Yeah.
It's like there's enough for everybody to work on. That you take your part and we'll take ours, and that's fine.
Well, on the assessment, there was a number representing hours that the city committed or costs. I forget. How was that determined? And is it is it a metric that you want to have more of or less of? Do you want to have more requirements from the city or be less of a burden?
Yeah, I think those numbers were sort of estimated based on self-reported time spent by staff liaisons on commission management, which varies widely. I think, again, this goes back to kind of the standardization approach. Some staff liaisons are much more active in developing, recommendations, taking minutes, it just varies quite widely. So, and I think the report acknowledges that how much time staff spend varies quite widely. But I think the heart of what you're getting at is the study is like very much a sort of business use case or like a business case analysis. In fact, that's one of like the explicit recommendations is like assess the business case for each board or commission, which like has some merit, but it also has limits. We aren't in fact a business. We are a unit of government that is that values things that a normal business case analysis might not value, including engaging with residents. And so Terry Amsler, for instance, who's a professional, I think adjunct instructor at SPIA, who works on these things, has commented on this many times in some of our committee meetings that it's really not maybe a useful frame for thinking about. And we kind of concluded as a committee unanimously that we already do that, as well as consider other aspects anytime we look at a new board or commission. I think what's absent is sort of an ongoing review of boards and commissions and how they're functioning and whether or not they're going to be improved. But that, again, goes to the heart of the, I guess, last six recommendations, really, that we are supportive of, which have to do with training, standardization, et cetera.
So that was my concern, is if it's going to be looked at from a business perspective, and we're only using 2 hours and they're using 24 hours, if it's looking at like a budget incentive, we're getting cut and they're getting more support. Or they're looking at it as, okay, this one's costing more and this one costs almost nothing, so time-wise. I just want to make sure that that was being thrown out the window because it's not a standardized metric.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I think it goes also to like departments and department heads need to take some ownership in like managing this too. It's like, if this is too much of a drain on staff resources, like let's work together and figure that out. Like if I think, for instance, Linda Thompson, the environmental planner, often writes the memos that that the Environmental Commission comes up with to make recommendations about development proposals, like before the Plan Commission. Maybe that's not something the staff can take on, and the EC is absolutely free to still pursue that, but it might require them taking on the responsibility of writing that memo. I have no idea. It's a hypothetical of like, the right balance of staff time. I know a lot of our staff are just very stretched, and so I think that's where kind of the motivation and constraints were coming into play. But I think on the council, at least, we've kind of agreed that that's the idea of a business case being the driver is like not ideal. That it's a consideration.
I'm curious to better understand how you're assessing commissions, because in my perspective, I'm like, kind of what is the end goal that you would like to see the commissions achieve at the end of the day? For example, like I'm coming in for 5 months. Like what exactly would be the expectation of the contribution that I would have towards the commission? I think when you're thinking about training, that's kind of something that would be good, because I know we also like are all restricted in terms of our times. And so it's like, I will contribute as much as I see my peers contribute as well. So I'm just,
Yeah, I think some of that can go to training. I think some of this is, and some of what's contained in that is like sort of letting commissioners know what they're empowered to do and the tools they have at their disposal. I mean, y'all can like, there's no limit, like any working group, the commission itself as a whole could develop a legislative proposal, that it brings to city council and or the administration and asks for them to sponsor. So I'm talking about, phasing out of gas-powered equipment. We're working on that as a committee. That's something the commission could take up, honestly, if it wanted to, and come up with a legislative proposal, right? And either literally in the form of legislation or just a set of recommendations, recommend that to the council. There's examples of this type of like very active commission work. There was a omnibus overhaul of our parking code, chapter 18. Oh no, I forget the chapter number, or title number, but it was an ordinance in 2018, 1811, that the commission developed. It was one commissioner in particular, the chair, like really put a ton of work in, but the commission worked collaboratively to have a significant, legislative proposal that fundamentally changed how we do parking, because we were so far behind on maintenance, and set kind of a escalating schedule and started to price parking in a more sustainable way. And the administration didn't want to sponsor it when the commission brought it up, but the council did, and the council passed it, I think unanimously. So like that's a rare instance, like that's not super common, but it is a possibility. So like I think sometimes the commissions can end up feeling a little bit adrift because there isn't a lot of guidance around what tools they have, how they can interact or engage or advance their role of advising the city's administration and the council, as well as communicating with the public. So I'm hopeful that like a lot of these standardization efforts, it will be iterative, it'll take time, some years probably of implementation and just constant refinement. But I'm hopeful that we can make some of those things more clear and have both a more impactful boards and commissions and like a better and more consistent experience for commissioners as a whole. So yeah, I'm hopeful that that's the direction we're moving.
My second question is like, how are you diversifying people coming into the commissions? Is something that I'm curious about, like in terms of your demographics, like are we really pulling in to ensure that, our commissions are representative of our community? Like, is that a concern or?
Absolutely. I would say we are doing it with intention, but inconsistently and not as good as it could be done. So what I mean specifically is that in my experience, we have, I don't know about the mayoral side, they have half the appointments. I have no idea how that's done. I think a lot of times staff recommends somebody or, somebody in the mayor's office decides who's heading that. They probably also have similar considerations in mind. In my experience on the council, most of, or at least the committee that I'm on, we are mindful of the current, demographic makeups of commissions when we're interviewing for them. So if we're looking at 3 or 4, interviewees for a single role, we have that in mind in the context of the current commission, in the context of our board and commission system generally. But that's not very active. That's sort of a little bit context specific and responsive. And so what I think could be much better is active and intentional outreach and recruitment from within the community. And that's where we struggle, I would say, on the council end, simply as a matter of capacity. It's just a lot, frankly, to manage on top of work, and, to also do all the things the council demands. And that's where, again, dedicated staff, would really come into play to be able to help build relationships with underrepresented communities in our board and commission ecosystem, to bring in more people to serve and diversify perspectives and outlooks and experiences. So I think it can be done better, but I would say it's at least on our minds, and we're aware of challenges and shortcomings there.
Do you think that's more the purview of the appointing committee to recruit people, or is that part of the commission's responsibility to try to recruit more diverse? Or
I don't think it's well defined, but I think the commission should absolutely feel empowered to help recruit folks from the community, for sure. Like that's not an explicit duty of theirs, but like there's no problem with that, and a commission being aware of and wanting to take some action on that is a good thing. Other questions or?
That was very enlightening. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, well that's all the updates for me.
Okay, we'll move on to reports from commissioners. We'll start with waste management.
Thanks. So we have a guest today. Ellie Spear is the owner of Garden Q and runs also Garden Quest, a nonprofit with an urban farm and an educational center. And for the approximately last 8 months, they've been running a neighborhood food waste pilot on their own. And so she came to speak. You can sit here, you can go up there, about her experiences of collecting neighbors' food waste and the transitions that she's made as she has gained more knowledge.
So I started in November researching a process called bokashi composting. This is after for years doing hot composting, which is above ground composting for large wastes from the garden, from the yard, then inventing or installing a vermicomposting system that I purchased, and then finding the limitations of that, and then developing my own, with my family, my own vermicomposting system that with all the limitations has worked a lot better. I can compost all year round with the worms outside my house, and ended up installing it at Child's Elementary School 4 years ago, a 12-bin system. COVID made some hiccups in that, but they were using it. The 5th and 6th graders were using it for the whole school, bringing food in. We taught them how to do it. It was also installed last year at Wonder Lab. And so I was learning how to teach people and kids how to separate their food waste and compost it in a secure manner that was different than the above ground composting, and it seemed to make a lot more sense. But upon doing this, we found that it was that we were needing, the worms were working so quickly that we weren't producing as much food or as much amended soil as we needed. And so we went, well, wait a second, why don't we start approaching neighbors and asking them for their food waste? So this was before Earth Keepers shut down. And but I had been told about bokashi composting, and that this was another way that was even more environmentally friendly, sustainable. If you look at the different kinds of compost, you talk about throwing your food away in the trash, that's a level 0. And then your hot composting, that's like a level 4 in terms of 0 being the worst, 10 being the best. And then your vermicomposting, that jumps it up into an 8. But then bokashi composting, I learned, is like your number 10. That is your star. It's the way the earth composts things. It's the fastest way. It generates the least amount of, in terms of it generates the most nutrients and the least amount of waste. And so I was like, oh, I want to try this. And I heard that it was composted nutrients even composted waste even faster. And so I said, let's try to take neighbors' food waste. So I reached out to the neighborhood association. I said, could you send this out? And I had 10 neighbors say, I want to do it. And that's actually how many I wanted. I said, I don't want to take on any more than I can. I gave them not this bucket, but I gave them, because this was the beginning, I gave them a 5-gallon container with a white top, and then I gave them a carbon filter, because I didn't want them to go, ooh, this smells, this is yucky, I don't want to do it. And then I also said, if you want to help with the process, I'm going to give you shredded paper, or if you have shredded leaves, and that's going to help soak up some of that gook. And I said, I'm not picking it up. We're all in the neighborhood. I will take your food waste, but you need to drop it off. And I went through a 10-minute, I said, all I need is 10 minutes from you to explain what you need to do. And you don't have to tell me when you're dropping it off. You're going to put it right here. You're going to get a new bucket. I will clean it for you. And this is the process that we'll go through. If you're on vacation, don't drop it off. So I've been doing this for the past, so as I was doing this, I was putting it in my vermicomposting system and putting it in the bokashi. And what I found is that I was putting things in because I wanted to try to make it so simple for people. Vermicomposting, hot composting, there's certain things you cannot put into those systems. You can either hurt the worms or you can bring in other critters. This system, I can tell them to put in everything except for oil. You can even do bones, but bones take a long time. And so I started playing around with it and starting to put more and more of their food waste into this bucket. And what I found is that it composted faster. I was producing more stuff. And as I started telling some of these people about it, they said, oh, that sounds really, really easy. I want to try. So I've actually converted three of the people who originally started. I've converted them over where they actually decided that they wanted to buy this compost system, the bokashi, because they were getting their own soil amendments, their own fertilizer, their own drain cleaner. It also cleans out drains. It's different than compost tea. I don't know if you're familiar. A lot of people make compost tea. This is actually shelf stable for 5 years instead of 48 hours. And it's, everyone can keep it, you can keep it in your house. It doesn't smell. It has a the top closes so your pet doesn't get in it, raccoons don't get in it. And once I've shown people this system, I actually have people, I just had someone last week who came and she lives in Bedford, and she said, I showed her it. She's been composting for years. She's like, we sort of, we compost, no. I said, well, I'm looking for other people to train so they can help their neighborhoods. And I said, I've written for an IDEM grant. I'm hoping to get some of these so that I can then pass these out to other neighborhoods. And she wrote to me 2 days later and said, I can't wait. I already have neighbors that want to give it their waste to me. Tell me how I can do this and train me. So I'm sorry, I'm sort of jumping all over the road with this. But what I found is you guys wanted an update on my pilot program. What I found is that the 9 neighbors who started, I did a survey. They all love being able to bring their food waste, keep their food waste in the neighborhood. They don't mind dropping it off. They like the flexibility of it. They said it is easy. They just put it in and they layer it with the paper or the leaves. Bokashi is the same thing. You're layering it with a fermented wheat germ. So I want to actually transition my entire group over to this other process because I'm having to do because I found that this is a faster process than any other kind of compost. I have to do a lot of work as the manager of this program. And the extra work that I have to do, I actually can have the people my neighbors actually do the first part of it. If they have this and they have the Bokashi brand. So instead of getting a 5-gallon bucket that smells, that has fruit fly larvae because they've gone on vacation, has mold, the people who drop this off, it comes like this, it doesn't smell, and they've done the layering for me. And when I open it up 2 weeks later, it smells like pickles. It's like sweet pickles. So by transitioning them to this, they're already being a teammate of mine and doing step 1 of the process versus me having to go through the gunk. And it's pretty gross and clean. It's really gnarly. And going through, I do it because I love it. I want to reduce our neighborhood's waste stream. But it is gross. But going to the people that I've transitioned to this, they just drop off their bucket. I let it sit for 2 weeks. Sometimes they take the tea that comes off of it to spray on their plants. I could go into foliar sprays, I won't. But they can use the products. And that's, I think, a huge difference than any other composting program is you don't get any products from it. But people who are partners, like my neighbors who are partners in this, they can actually get beneficial products, free products from their food waste if they choose to, for their indoor plants, for their outdoor plants, for their gardens, for their trees, for their yard. And it seems like everyone from the survey that I took, everyone was like, they haven't transitioned to this. My plan is to transition them to this, but they're happy taking part of that, taking control, bringing me their food waste, giving me feedback, being a part of it. So you had a question?
Yeah. So from what I understand about Bokashi, well, there's kind of a lot of things going on here. There's one like the benefit of getting food waste out of the waste stream and out of landfills. There's potentially benefit on the back end. It sounds like a lot of what they appreciate is that you're doing a lot of the work, which like most people do.
Yeah.
Is that going to scale? I mean, is it dependent on someone like you who has an urban farm, is willing to be washing buckets and slopping the stuff around?
So
Like-
it would be finding, I don't know how many more people I actually want to take. When I just wrote the IDEM grant, I said I want to try to train other people to be like me, versus scaling up.
But that still would require people doing, I mean, you
I-
get the buckets of
So
stuff and
yes.
it's pickled, it's not
Yeah.
smelly, but you still got to handle it. You still got to process it. You still got to like,
Right. So it's finding people who already have gardens, who are already buying soil, who are already buying fertilizer, and if they're already doing those things, this is an easier process. This is a less expensive process overall if you are growing things.
Sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
and I was gonna say, you don't have to, like, I'm taking 10 people, 10 neighbors, because we have the capacity. But the family that I just trained who sells at the Bedford Farmers Market, she said, we want to start off with 3.
Mhm.
And I think that's okay.
Mhm.
I don't think that's a problem to have a bunch of people who are taking, 2 people, 3 people, if you're helping those others who, want to do something with their food waste, but they can't, they don't have the time, they don't.
Can I address the scaling? 'Cause
Yeah.
Full disclosure, this is my sister, if you guys weren't aware. This kind of goes in with the compost captain's idea.
Yep.
Is we got tired, and she sticks her hand in way more food waste than I have, but I've done it enough, and wow.
It gets funky pretty quick.
It gets funky pretty quick. And so what we want is people to take their neighbor's food waste and then get tired of taking their neighbor's food waste and transition their neighbors into doing their own bokashi.
Yeah,
And
so-
especially with Bloomington, where we lost earth keepers, there's a ton of residents that are looking for
someone who can,
looking for a solution.
The,
So
the
we
problem
will-
is
we
how
will-
much are they willing to do?
Right. So we will start them by taking their food waste because there are people in every neighborhood, there are households
Sure.
in every
Yep.
neighborhood that are already
Yep.
composting. And so that's the idea. Like you're fishing for bluegill, let's teach you how to fish for tuna in a way that's much better.
Totally get it. And
Right,
the idea
so-
of taking a waste product, converting it to something of value
And
is
so-
great. I guess the thing with, like, when you get the bucket of pickled food waste, you still have to process it, right? It's not.
Yes, but it's easier. See, I've run into so many people
Mm-hmm.
and looked at the school
Mhm.
different school compost systems, and people don't understand how many browns to how many greens, and they have raccoons coming in, they have rats. None of those things apply.
From start to
this.
finish, traditional composting 9 to 18 months.
Sure.
Start to finish 2 months to soil. So you can bury this directly. You can bury the pickled food waste directly into garden beds. 6 weeks later, it's done.
You still got like big chunks of watermelon.
Yeah.
on it.
Yep.
It's just like
Yeah,
pickled
but-
watermelon. on
right,
it.
correct.
So there's still
But
like the physical
But
problem.
it breaks down that much faster because it's already been pickled, because it has broken down some of the cellular structure. So if you put it into your hot compost pile, you now have anaerobic versus aerobic, and so that's going to take a little bit longer, maybe 8 to 10 weeks. It's still vastly faster. And so people that do grow their own food, or even people that have their own indoor plants, you want to repot, put your food waste at the bottom of your pot. It's going to turn into soil. So it's so much faster, and because you get this tea out of it that you can use to clean your drains, that you can use to feed your plants, so on and so forth. And we've experienced larger produce, healthier plants, sweeter
So you're
produce.
telling me it cleans your drain and is also good fertilizer. It's like safe on your plants.
100%.
I
We
spray it.
have bell peppers this big this year.
Oh,
because
I
of-
don't doubt it, but
So-
like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has so many added benefits than any other kind of composting system. Even if you
But
don't
that's-
grow outside, you can put it at the bottom of a pot when you're transplanting an indoor plant, and it will decompose quickly, and it provides nutrients as it's decomposing.
Right. I guess my trouble with the process is the amount of work that you're putting into it. And if you're having to do that, great for you and your
Yeah.
neighbors. But in terms of like scaling something up, I think I'm pretty skeptical of any composting, like vermicomposting, that has a lot of steps or a lot of extra
Yeah.
additions, or like I like to
Right.
put it in a pile and come back years later and like forget about it.
Right.
You know?
But if you need it quickly, all this is you take your pickled watermelon, you dig, it's either you literally dig a trench in your garden, you cover it over with 4 to 6 inches of soil, you come back 8 weeks later, it's gone. Like that's as easy as it is.
Mhm.
Or if you don't have room in your garden because it's full of plants, you dig a trench, you cover it over with 6 inches of soil, you do a thin layer, and 8 weeks later, you have a pile of soil.
And that's the ideal way. If you just want to throw it into your pile and leave it, that's fine too. But because it's pickled, you're not going to have the animals coming after it because it's at a pH of 3.5. You're not going to have the rats. You're not going to deal with any of that. So all the negatives that people experience with composting, you're not experiencing with this. And it's easier to understand, easier to teach, easier to adopt. So is it perfect? No. People just want their food waste to disappear. But this is hands down the best way to do it.
Composting isn't meant to be glamorous.
Exactly.
Well aware of all those things. Thank you. It's extra steps, and I like a lot of things work if somebody's willing to do all the hard work for everybody else, right? And so I guess it's cool when it works.
But see, that's why I'm transitioning to this. I'm saying to my neighbors, help me with the problem of your food waste. You do step 1 of the process. I was taking their icky stuff and having to transfer in here and then transfer it out.
And it's not just dumping it in there. It's 2 inches, layering it, and then putting the wheat germ down. 2 inches.
Right, yeah, which is a lot more work.
Right.
Is what.
So, and that's why we're transitioning our neighbors to doing it themselves, because then all we have to do is take the bucket and then,
I literally just spread it in the trough, cover it with soil, and I'm done.
Is that something people are going to do though?
Yes.
Like you have a farm, you're looking to get nutrients from your neighborhood. You don't want to import a bunch of compost. And part of the problem is like a pickup truck full of compost is like a year's food waste in terms of in terms of the output, the value at the end. So it's like I can go get that for $20. I mean, it's the numbers are never really going to work out very well unless you're willing to do it kind of for free and on principle.
I mean, I know a lot of people just chuck their garden waste, their watermelon scraps like in their backyard and say just let it sit, and it takes a long time to break down, and then they have this pile growing up, growing larger and larger. They could take this, or that person who is the compost captain could take this and say, a couple times a year, use this as your layer, and that compost that you've just been everything you've just been chucking back there, it will turn over faster, and that pile will go away.
Is this something that individuals can do for their own home gardens?
Yes.
Like maybe once a year they do it for just the initial part of the season?
I mean, people drop off on average the 5-gallon bucket once every 2 weeks. That's what I'm seeing in terms of food waste production.
But if it only takes 8 weeks for it to happen, could we start it in fall? Yeah. And then utilize it by spring?
Oh, you mean your soil?
Yeah, just for an individual small scale.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I have, because I'm doing all this experimentation with the worms and the bokashi to see how fast that the process will work. I'm actually putting it in, and we're making it faster than my storage area.
Okay. So is it possible to start people off at this small individual scale, independent scale, where they do it themselves, and then as they adopt the process, then they start contributing more to farms? And
I mean, I have people who they're just doing it on their own. They're like, I have my garden, I don't want to take anyone else, and I have someone who's a chef in town, and she's using the tea, and she's saying, or she's not the chef, she's the gardener, her husband's the chef, and her husband's saying like things are tasting better and our plants are growing bigger because they're using the tea. It's a perfect introductory. Like, it doesn't have to be that people take on others. It would be if they see that they're enjoying the process and they're liking.
Right, but if it takes off as a trend and everybody starts doing it, then you have this extra resource that people were just throwing away anyway.
Right. And it's applicable to all those people that can't access composting currently, apartments, condos, so on and so forth. And so because it's not accessible, they don't do it, and all their food waste goes into the trash. Unless if somebody comes and picks it up.
Well, but even then, if you're making one of those every 2 weeks in an apartment, you're gonna fill up your apartment pretty quick with buckets of pickled stuff. Like I guess I'm pushing back not.
So she's saying that they give her a bucket,
Mhm.
but every 2 weeks it does not fill that up because you actually compact the food down. People would drop off the 5-gallon buckets and they would be half full or 2/3
Okay,
full.
so 4 weeks then. But I guess it's an interesting technology. I guess I just worry about the like this is a thing everyone should do model.
Yeah.
I could see a lot of different types of composting, a lot of different scales. So there's like the in-vessel aerated composting. I like part of why I joined the commission was because I couldn't get IU sold on like, hey, do you want it for free? You just got to write the grant, you know.
Do those take all kinds of food waste?
Yeah.
Can you put everything in?
Yeah, from what I understand.
Okay. Yeah, I have no experience, but that's
not to say that's the best way either, but to be like here's a host. I mean, some people like the ones you crank. I always think it's kind of silly, but you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is I had 60 kids, kindergartners and first graders yesterday at my house from Marlin, and they actually went through this process, and I didn't have to say separate your sandwich with the meat from your vegetables.
Yeah,
and
I
in a
never understood that.
household, it is so, I mean, I have 3 kids. It is so, because I've been experimenting. I'm like, there's for the worms, there's for the chickens, there's like.
Not having to separate.
Not
makes it
having
so
to
much easier.
separate. And I think a lot of people stop doing it because it's too complicated. And that's what's so beautiful about this. We can, except for oil. And I'll tell you straight up, yes, bones I have to put through twice. Corn cobs, yes. But when you get to take that avocado pit that you've had in your compost for years and you're still going like this and you get to break it in your hand,
After
or you
2
take
weeks.
or you take a turkey carcass and you go like this, it is pretty darn cool. But for families, for anyone who's not used to composting and going through it, just to be able to say, dump everything in there. You're not going to have to worry about pathogens. You're not going to have to worry about salmonella. Everything can go in here. I think this is by far the easiest way if someone wants to. Some people are still going to throw their stuff in the trash. I mean, it's just the way it is. But if you want to compost, this is the simplest way to do it. The kindergartners were having so much fun because there's this pressure plate and you got to step on it to make sure you get as much in here so you don't have to do it a lot. So they were stepping, we had them each, putting their foot in and stepping down. Like they were just dumping everything in and stepping on it. And till you get to the top, you're doing this. The kids were able to put in the wheat germ. It's something that's very simple for families to do.
How are you sourcing the brand that you have to use?
So I buy it in bulk from a company because I found I was gonna start making my own. It's just that's too complicated. I have too many other things to do. There's lots of YouTube videos on how to do it, but I just buy it in bulk so that I get the cheapest price.
Do you run through a lot of it, or is it like?
Do I run through a lot of it? I mean,
What was the average for a family?
Average for a family, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So what we found is that you will be paying less than $50, and I'm saying this on the high average, less than $50 a year.
Okay.
So after you buy these, I mean, there's some companies that sell them. The one, I don't work for this company, promise. The owner of this company, he has been doing this for 30 years. He's a PhD. He can answer all of my technical questions. I really liked him, so I went with his version of it. He sells them for $60. So you have your $60 in for, actually you need 2 of them because you're going to have one sitting, you're going to have one active. And I was looking at it comparing it to there's how many families were doing Earth Keepers. And I actually had some families go, help me, can you take my food waste? I heard you're doing this. I want to keep doing this. I can't stand throwing my stuff away. And those are the families that actually are doing, they were like, I'm going to buy this. This is cheaper than Earth Keepers. This seems easy. And so so it's, $120, but I know there's cheaper ones. We're going to test out some other ones. And
So, and that's the
yeah.
initial investment, and after
And
that, you're
it's
talking
less- yeah.
$50 a year, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, depending on how much food waste you have.
Yeah.
But compared to composting programs where they come and pick it up, that's $10 to $20 a month. That's a
Yeah.
significant difference.
I mean,
And then you also get the fertilizer and the soil amendment
It's still
out
a lot
of
of
it.
work too to drop off for a subscription service. So I
Right.
think this
Yeah.
is super cool.
Yeah, and I mean, people are, they're walking down the street with it, or they're going to take their kids to school and they just drop it off because I just took people in my neighborhood. I'm right there.
So your
It's not a
end
big deal.
goal, I mean, you're not trying to scale up at your house, but you're more of education outreach is what this is?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. I don't want to scale up. I mean, we may see, because I don't want to scale up because right now I told everyone, because I was first initially just putting it into my vermicomposting system, and I knew I couldn't take the meat and the rice and everything like that. So now I want to scale them to this, where I'm taking all of their food waste, which means I'm going to have more. They're going to be giving me more food.
But it's much
potentially.
simpler for us to deal with
Mhm.
because it's, 6
Mhm.
weeks, 6 to
So
8
it
weeks
is
away
kind
from
of a-
soil.
Scaling up at your property, but also, it sounds like, I mean, you're obviously doing schools and all that outreach type of work as well.
Yeah, I'm starting to introduce.
Are you
to-
taking
so-
the schools?
I'm going to. I'm taking. I may be taking a school. They're working on a grant for me. I may be taking a school through a garden design process, and all the infrastructure that you need for that. And this will be one thing that I discuss with the schools, because this is something that they could actually have in their classroom and during snack time, especially with kindergartens and first graders. Here's your bucket of bran. There's 1 teaspoon. You put your banana peel in there, close it. And it just sits there. And they can clean the school drains with it if they have nothing else to do with it. So yes, not every person is going to want to clean this out. You don't even need soap for it. You're not supposed to put any soap in it, so you have that one less input. I happen to put vinegar in it because vinegar is acidic anyways, just to give it a slightly different smell. But yes, the person who wants to take on someone else's or do this, they have to clean it out.
It kind of goes along with our compost captain thing. So like whoever wants to be the captain that's taking their neighbors, they would go to Ellie to learn about how to actually compost if they're not already. So it's not that, I don't think the goal is to have every single person or household to doing bokashi, but maybe the ones that want to take other people's and be a captain.
It's a good introductory program. A good first way. I don't even separate my laundry, so I'm not gonna.
Right. So this would be great for you because you don't have to separate
And I don't know,
anything.
It'd be a perfect introduction for composting for me, and I've got somebody that would use it, and then if they like it, then they do it. So I think it's a good way to introduce the program and spread the concept of it.
Yeah, after everything that I've done at different schools and teaching people all these different ways to do it in my own evolution, by far, it's like black. To me, it's black and white. It's
The bee's
easy,
knees.
simple.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay. We're gonna end it there.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes.
We really appreciate it. Did you want to do any other updates?
Yeah, the only other update is Porter County's doing a food waste pilot, and they have an individual who has donated land and is taking care of it. But what we discovered is that the state of Indiana, if you keep the area that you're doing the food waste composting on, I think it's less than 300 square feet. It might be 400 square feet, but either way, then you don't have to have permits. So that's a real obvious opportunity. If you could have local residents that have the space or public land and you keep it under that 300-400 square feet area, you could have compost centers situated all around the city and take care of all of that waste stream without having to get those very hard to get permits.
Okay. All right. For community outreach, Justin isn't here. He didn't give me an update. Najal's not here. Did you have anything for the just transition?
You want to do your
Yeah, we met last week, and so we talked about like what are the projects that we want to focus on. And one of the projects that we discussed was like doing an environmental justice focused project, climate change. So like how are homeless people being impacted by climate change, especially since we're entering it's gonna be really cold. So like can we do an event where we provide support to them and give them the things that they need whenever we're entering this cold season, just because I don't know if y'all followed, but especially with climate change, like the weathers have gotten more severe now. Do you want to add anything to it?
No, I think, we'll see. It sounds like the grant is still not available, so it's kind of TBD if we'll be able to get that money this year. We'll have to wait until 2024. But yeah.
Okay, perfect, cool, thank you. We don't have any discussions or resolutions, new business, it's not really even new business, but I forgot to remind everyone that we have there's another green drinks happening October 25th. I'll forward the email. It's a professor at IU. Should be cool.
I can add you all that email list too. I sent it out.
Did you? Okay, cool. You send it out?
He's Green Drinks.
He is the
He's
Green
Drinks.
Green Drinks is in the room with us. Okay, perfect. Okay, does anyone have any other new business they'd like to add?
I just want to share something. I had the high privilege of crashing the STS forum in Kyoto, Japan.
You went to Japan?
Yeah, I was in science. That's the other part. But
Okay.
Science and technology and society. The primary topics this year were, first of all, it's where an invite-only list. I crashed it, so I wasn't really. That's not good. But it's all industry leaders, scientists, doctors, all coming together to discuss science and technology and society. So the primary topics were AI, climate change, and sustainability. And they definitely operate off of the SDGs. It was a little ironic that it was hosted by Saudi Aramco. So that a lot of the discussions were about maybe transitioning from traditional fossil fuels to the next molecule. You can interpret that however you want, but eventually it's still going to be a molecule for trade, whether it's methane or hydrogen or lithium. Even with solar technologies, they're concerned about how that's going to be managed. But even the fossil fuel industries were in attendance because they see the future of moving off of traditional fossil fuels and adopting new, greener
Technologies.
Exactly. But we can discuss it more later. But it was great that sustainability was high on all their minds, and in many different ways. Whether it was about antibiotics and their use and their effect on the gut and water, and really there were so many different types of people there that were sharing all of their fields with each other and just trading ideas, but they did operate all off of the SDG. So I think it's great that we adopted them, and it's the way they all communicate about it.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit more later.
And to jump on the topic of AI, Andrew Yang 2020 baby. He's coming to speak at IU on the topic of AI on October 26th.
Oh, really?
For anybody that's interested.
Huh.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to adjourn now. Our next meeting is November 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. right here. Thanks, everyone.